Welcome everybody, and special greetings to you experts here. We have Kyung Kin Song from Republic of Korea. She is an executive director coming from the Perth US Asia Center. And we have also at the table Kekeli Ahiable, the Ghanaian advisor from the Tony Blair Institute for Global Change. And our topic for this discussion is connectivity gap, unlocking growth for the global south. So the key buzzwords for starting the conversation is global south, connectivity and infrastructure. And I would like to start with you that how many things should we understand under the term infrastructure, because probably it's much more than ports and railroads and highways since it's the 21st century.
Precisely. Investment in digital transformation and infrastructure is a prerequisite for growth and development of manufacturing in any given economy these days. Connectivity helps enhance productivity and competitiveness of manufacturing and supports the economy effectively integrated into the global and regional supply chains. And especially when the economy is integrated into the global and regional supply chains, small and medium companies can benefit greatly from connectivity and integration in the global and regional supply chains. Building and developing manufacturing means job creation. It will help the economy mitigating unemployment issues, especially youth unemployment. Youth unemployment is a serious problem in everywhere, but especially in the global south countries. Investment in connectivity should come with, technology transfer or share. Let's take an example of AI adoption. Not all countries should develop their own AI models. What we need is we take advantage of the already available AI models and technology. And, for much of our daily activities, production and economic activities, we do not need the most advanced AI models, technology. Leave the advanced AI technology with the two competing powers. And AI adoption will assist skilling and upskilling of the workforce. Of course, it will have to come with greater attention to and investment in education and training. It will also improve work environments and productivity. Connectivity and digital transformation require investment in reliable energy production too, for them to bring about expected and promised positive results. Without connectivity and digital transformation, the frontier economies will be isolated from the rest of the world and will be unable to reap the benefits of trade. Perhaps Kekeli can talk about the benefits of trade, especially for the global south countries.
Well, actually, that's true because you have a strong position on the relevance of the digital infrastructure.
Yeah, I guess a lot is already said about, the lack of, adequate physical infrastructure, like you mentioned, the ports, the rails, the road transport, all of that. And I think that what's needed, it's clear, investment, all of that. So I'm not going to focus on it. I like to talk about the softer part of, the infrastructure or connectivity issue, which is, let me touch on trade facilitation, which is pretty much the processes that you need to set in place so that trade can happen across and by the continent, I mean Africa in this case, so trade can move faster, cheaper, and be more modern. And one of the most, cost-effective and transformative ways you can get that done today in our 21st century is digital trade. And so I'm actually excited to talk about this project that was just launched by the Africa Continental Free Trade Area. This was actually just last week on the sidelines of the G20 meetings that's just happening. So we just launched together. So it's the AFCFTA Secretariat together with the Tony Blair Institute and a couple of other partners. And what we've launched is the Africa Digital Access and Digital Public Infrastructure for Trade project. It's called ADAPT for short. And it's pretty much meant to implement the AFCFTA's digital trade protocol. And what that's going to do is connect. So right now there's a lot of digital trade initiatives happening across different African countries. But the challenge is they are siloed within national systems. They're not necessarily talking to each other. So what ADAPT is going to do really is to connect all these different systems. So customs from Ghana can speak in real time to customs in Kenya. And so you're eliminating the need for paper documents. You are sharing documents because you're sharing like in real time. People can have access to it, and it's all happening on a digital public infrastructure platform. And so it's going to make trade cheaper. It's going to bring in more SMEs onto kind of formal trade. And we're thinking that it's a bold claim, but we're thinking it's going to be the biggest reform to international trade since the WTO, actually. So it's something I'm quite excited about and would love to talk about. I can talk about it all day, but we have 15 minutes, so I'll stop here.
Super. And I think it's how recent thing you mentioned. It means that a lot more to come. So
a lot more to come, yes.
Good to follow the topic, and you both. Yep.
How long a project is it? Time frame?
Okay, so we just launched it last week. The Secretariat has secured funding to pilot it in 3 countries over the next 2 years. So it's Ghana, it's Kenya, and then there's going to be one North African country that's yet to be determined, but that's going to happen over the next 2 years. And then the plan is to get more funding and then bring on all the other 54 countries in the years following that. But yeah.
Where do you think you're getting the necessary funding?
So this system is connecting governments, it's connecting the private sector, and also governments and private sector. And it's also going to be commercial, right? And so apart from laying the digital infrastructure, the foundation, the foundational one, which the pilots are going to do, there's opportunity for private actors to plug in. So we call it connecting nodes to the foundational system. And so your banks can connect, and through transacting and delivering services to their clients, they're also making money off that. So there are opportunities to commercialize apart from laying the foundational infrastructure.
Well, I surmise the international financial institutions like the IMF, the World Bank,
we're talking to. Yes.
Yeah, they should be part of it, an important part of it, right?
Yes.
Yes. Well, I like to talk about, the necessity of reform of the multilateral development banks, financial institutions, to be more effective, let's say, to collaborate with you, right? So, MDBs, the most important objective work of MDBs, in my view, is, providing financing and technical assistance for capacity building for, frontier economies and the global south, bracing for transformation, right? And on top of that, many frontier economies have a serious debt problem, which destabilizes their growth and development, including food security. And hence, debt relief is on top of the priority list of frontier economies. And multilateral bodies like the IMF, the World Bank, and regional development banks in this regard are key players in supporting the frontier economies, managing the debt issues, in consultation and also in partnership with major powers and stakeholders of the banks. Given this, reform of the multilateral development banks, governance structure and voting power is long overdue because their governance structure and voting power is a reflection of the economic landscape of the 1960s and the 1970s. Thus, once reform is done, I think it will have significant impact on fairer representation of the Global South and more resource allocation for the Global South. So close and well-organized public-private partnerships can indeed boost capacity building of frontier economies. Greater government investment and credit guarantees, for instance, could encourage private sector or private funds to make more investment in digital transformation, for instance. And in terms of AI adoption, I think public sector adoption could stimulate the private sector adoption and use of AI across the economy. Private sector can set an example by doing, and it can be effective in frontier economies, especially because oftentimes the public sector outsizes the private sector in many frontier economies. That's my view about the reform of the multilateral development banks, which will be very necessary and important for promoting the growth and stability and development of the Global South, including your project.
Fully agree.
You highlighted that there is a financial source barrier, that this is an important target to solve it, but there are also political, economic, and as you mentioned, there are also capacity issues. What are the exact challenges on the way of developing the infrastructure that is beneficial for the region, and how to solve these challenges?
That is such a big question. But, well, obviously there's a lot, so maybe I'll just focus on maybe one. I'd say one of the biggest things is, because obviously there's a lot to do, there's a lot that needs to be done, but one big challenge that I'd say is the need to prioritize. There's a lot to do. Where do we start? There's a lot to do. We have limited resources. Which one do we start with? And what we've said, for instance, in a recent paper that we authored at the Tony Blair Institute was, look at, again, we're talking about connectivity, right? So look at the corridors, for instance, that are high volume. So we know that there's the potential for higher, say, intra-Africa trade, right? Across, say, the Abidjan-Lagos corridor in West Africa. If there are, so the gaps that are there do we need to expand the highways? Do we need to get the ports working better? Whatever it is, look at it from a corridor approach. So look at the high volume corridors or the corridors that have the potential to scale even the fastest, and then concentrate resources there and get those corridors working better. Once it happens, like whether it's your economies of scale, then you get more pumping in, you get more money, more funds coming in while the reforms are happening in the development finance institutions and all of that. And then more can be pumped in. So prioritize, start from how do you select what starts first? What has the most potential to generate revenue, to create jobs, and then focus on those, improve that, and then it expands slowly, and then we get that happening. So that would be one challenge and one potential solution to it.
I fully agree with you. Whenever I say, whenever I have a speaking opportunity, I always say, our biggest problem in our life is we have too many important things, too many priorities.
Yeah.
But what's more important is that we be able to sequence the priorities. That's knowing how to sequence the priorities is the very beginning of the grand things that you would like to achieve in your life.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
When we spoke about the digital infrastructure, then you gave some examples how may it be turned to advantages for the region. But overall, to speak about how may the rebuilt connectivity, improved connectivity be turned to beneficial trends at the Global South. I mean mainly about manufacturing and regional supply chains.
So, sorry, the question is how how does doing that, how does a better connected continent lead?
What is the pragmatic outcome that we are hoping
Oh, job creation,
Yes.
socioeconomic transformation. That's what we need. So you do better trade. I mean, trade is, I think, about 60% of of global GDP. That's how important trade is. And so if you get trade working better in the global south, you're improving livelihoods. That's pretty much the fastest route to socioeconomic transformation you could get. So we get trade working better, we get jobs created, we get livelihoods improved.
When we speak about infrastructure, then actually Shashi Tharoor mentioned it a few times in lectures and also written that infrastructure can rebuild dependency. It absolutely matters to whom you export, what do you export.
100%.
It defines the path that you are going on. What are the considerations, or how would you prioritize? How you pointed on that this is a key political challenge.
If I was the chairman of, say, ECOWAS, which is the regional economic community of West African states, so pretty much the head of a regional economic community, I'd say, again, take a corridor approach, take a regional approach. I talk a lot about developing regional value chains and even bringing bigger continental value chains, which is what the AFCFTA is trying to, get moving on the African continent. Well, do that. So right now, instead of how, for instance, you have your railway connections that are leading out towards the coastal areas and the ports, all designed to pretty much take raw materials out, whether to the east or to the west. We say Africa, link your transport systems, link your systems together, link your digital systems together, your transport system, link it together so you can actually trade. So you can take, say, so let's say we're building, say, the car value chain or supply value chain in Africa. So South Africa is doing a lot of that. A lot of importation from Asia is fueling that. Whereas in West Africa, for instance, say in Sierra Leone or Liberia, you have a lot of rubber production. How do you get rubber processed in Liberia or Sierra Leone and have better, say, transport or shipping methods to move it from there down to South Africa into the car manufacturing industries, right? So connect the system, connect the continent physically, and I guess the softer part, which is what we've been talking about on digital trade, so that, processing can happen more effectively and at a competitive advantage, because the reality is currently there's not much of that, right? So you want to build those competitive advantages, even in areas that, well, there's not necessarily right now a comparative advantage, but it's necessary to build it. I always point to, maybe just mention this really quickly, I always point to the necessity for that during COVID, for instance, right? Where, African countries were really squeezed when the global north and even China, there was the freeze of exportation of critical PPE and vaccines that countries in Africa needed. And so post-pandemic, there's been a more concerted effort to build vaccine manufacturing capacity on the continent, and even PPE, because when rubber hits the road, when it becomes necessary, you need to have some kind of sovereignty over your supply chains. So just add that on.
Can I suggest that we say we're creating interdependence instead of creating dependence? I mean, trade is two ways, not one-way traffic. So it's better to say interdependence.
I think that's a perfect last thought. Thanks for coming. Thanks for watching.
Thank you.